Thank you. So now it is my pleasure to invite our guests on camera to introduce themselves. We have the Vice Chair of Undergraduate Education in Computer Science and Engineering, Mia Minnes, and we have Veronica Abreu, the Assistant Dean of Academic Advising in one of our 7 colleges, Revelle. Thank you both for being here, and I'm going to pass the floor to you to take it away.
Okay, thank you, Kristen, for having us. We're super excited to kind of get a chance to talk to prospective students. Just to be transparent, I did work in computer science and engineering with Mia for about 5 years. So I'm super excited to be able to still kind of be involved in this project with her. So yeah, Mia, did you want to say anything before we move into it?
I just wanted to say hi to everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here and taking time from your day. And I see some questions already in the Q&A. Thank you for putting them in there. We'll be addressing them as we go. So just bear with us while we're going through some of the material we want to share with you. And we'll do our very best to answer all the questions that you put in there as well.
All right. So now it's loading for me. There we go. So first we want to start off with, obviously, UCSD has computing related majors. And so when a lot of students think about computing related prospects for jobs, they think computer science and engineering, which is great because we do have an amazing computer science and engineering department here at UCSD, but it is not the only department that offers computing related majors. So we have a lot of different departments, including bioengineering, biology, cognitive science, data science, electrical computer engineering, and math. So all of these different departments offer computing related majors that students can major in, but the nice part is that each one is very specialized as well. So a lot of students will actually not only just major in one of these, but maybe minor in another, because these departments typically tend to offer both majors and minors. So for example, a lot of computer science students will minor in cognitive science. And a lot of our biology majors who are specializing in bioinformatics may also minor in computer science. So there's really this nice complementary action that happens when you're doing a major and a minor in these, because then you're getting not just the depth in one area, but a good breadth in different areas. And so obviously when you're here, you're taking a major, whether it's bioinformatics, cognitive science, computer science. But what we like to remind you is that there's so many different job opportunities that you can get afterwards. And that includes things like computer graphics, artificial intelligence, programming, software design, anything in the medical field where you're like designing medical devices, robotics, teaching, data analysis. There's so many different opportunities. And it's not a one major to one job opportunity prospect. There's so many different ways to go, and it really comes back to a holistic view of the student. So what courses are you taking? What internships are you going after? What research opportunities have you done? What volunteer work have you done? What leadership have you kind of taken initiative with? So it's going to be all of those things that lead up to where you can go with different job opportunities. So don't think of it as a one-to-one. So which major do I have to be in to go into computer graphics? It's more about what is the holistic thing that you need to be doing to get to where you want to go. And here, like I said, we have a lot of different majors, so we have a really robust computing community. And one of the myths is that you must major in computer science or computer engineering to take advantage of computing related opportunities. That is 100% not true. Students from various different majors, minors can still partake in different computing related activities. There are a lot of different student organizations. There's a lot of great research that happens on campus. A lot of students from different majors will get really great internship opportunities. We have a lot of special projects either through the student organizations, through different courses. and just community resources. And then there's a lot of volunteer work that happens. So any of this students can get involved in without having to be within a specific major. It's more what you're interested in and what you're willing to pursue.
Great. And so I'll pick up on that theme that Veronica shared about what you can pursue when you're here and the opportunities. And I want to start first and foremost with the curriculum and the learning opportunities that you have here on campus if you choose to come here. We are really proud of the computing curriculum that we offer and the opportunities for learning. We think of it separated into the lower division that prepares you really well for the upper division. And the lower division is about building that foundation. We want you to be developing your skills and working towards proficiency with really solid foundations in programming, in theory, in hardware and systems, so that you're able to take the next step, invent the next big thing in computing. Once you've got those foundations laid, then depth and breadth come in those more advanced courses, the upper division courses. So those will continue those three threads of programming, theory, hardware, systems. And then depending on the specialization that you're interested in and the particular subdisciplines of computer science that you're interested in, or computing that you're interested in, you may be exploring software engineering. You may be looking at operating systems and next generation networking. You might be looking at databases. You might be looking at machine learning. You might be thinking about security, cryptography. You might be thinking about vision and graphics. You might be thinking about robotics. And what's amazing on campus here as a fairly large institution is that we have the capacity to offer courses in all of these specialties in many departments across campus. And many of the departments that we mentioned will recognize each other's courses, upper division courses, as counting towards majors. So there's really a robust collection of offerings for folks who are interested in computing.
I'm going to jump to one of the questions in the chat or the Q&A, which is, what is the class size of the largest computer science class offered? And really this comes back to what is the largest class on campus? So whatever we can get, that's usually what we will fill. So whether it's 400, and I think now we have a 600 seater room. So some of our classes will get up to that, that size. It's usually a lot more of a lower division, and our lower, like upper division, say like 100, 101, 105, that more majors have to take. A lot more of our specialized courses, like say video game design, those tend to be a lot smaller because they just don't scale up well. So we do have some smaller courses that are, only 25 students. So it really depends on the course. It depends on the quarter. It depends on what's available. But for the most part, our lower division will tend to be bigger because we do like for more students to be able to at least get an introduction to computer science and to programming, whereas the more higher level courses tend to be smaller just because they don't scale well. And then how hard is it for computer science majors to graduate in 4 years? It's not difficult. It's more about planning and being flexible with your schedule, and definitely meeting with your advisors early on. Computer science tends to have a heavy prerequisite chain. So understanding that you can't just jump from one thing to another very easily, that at least initially you do have to follow the course sequencing pretty well. But if you meet with your advisors, you'll be right on track. So there is a sequence, but it's definitely doable to graduate in 4 years. All right.
There's another question I want to pick up on in the chat. There's a question here about what's an example of lower division courses that teach theory. And I'm teaching one of those right now, this quarter. It's discrete mathematics for computer science. And it's a wonderful course. I love it. I really enjoy teaching it every time I can. And it's about the precision in communication and the technical skepticism that it takes to do computer science especially with the societal impact that we're seeing computer science have on the world. It's really important to train ourselves to be precise and to be rigorous in how we build systems and how we describe what they can and cannot do. So discrete math gives us the tools to talk about the programs and the systems that we build. And that's one example of a lower division course that involves theory. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue a little bit, and we'll keep taking questions from the Q&A as well. Beyond the courses and the classwork that that will help introduce you to our discipline, we want to make sure that you're really supported in working through that material. You might hear that computer science and computing is not a it's not a spectator sport. This is material that's best learned by doing. And so you'll see that a lot of the classes that you take in computing involve quite extensive homework where you're building, you're programming, you're designing. And so we are really proud of and quite famous for our tutoring program. We have embedded CSE tutors in just about all of our undergraduate classes. And this is a fantastic opportunity to really dive into the world of computing. So when you're taking a CSE class, you'll notice that undergraduate tutors are available for lab hours, for consultations, to help answer questions about the course material, and also to help answer questions about some of the planning that some folks are asking in the Q&A. Which courses work well with other courses? When should I start thinking about research opportunities or internship opportunities? That kind of informal advising that can be really beneficial when you hear from someone who's been in your shoes just recently. And so we have these opportunities to get to know other students and students who've gone through the class that you're in fairly recently. And then once you've taken the class, we really encourage our students to consider applying to tutor classes as well. We find it's a fantastic way to learn the material even more deeply, but also to give back to the community, to help more junior students improve communication skills, and really get involved. We find that there's so much energy around what can be built with computing, what can be invented, and we want everyone to be empowered to be part of that energy. All right, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Veronica. One way to harness that energy is through our student organizations. And there are such fantastic initiatives from our student organizations that really make our campus feel like a community. These organizations that are featured on the slide are just some sampling of the groups that our students have organized themselves around. So you'll notice that some of them are around mentorship, helping each other navigate technical topics, navigate the internship finding process. So doing interview prep and mock interviews, resume reviews. Some of these organizations are, they're all about service and outreach. So we have some groups that offer web development services to nonprofits around town to help support them in their mission. And then we have some of our students who go out into high schools and elementary schools and help bring computing and comfort with digital literacy to bring it to folks who may not have access to those resources. We also have lots of leadership opportunities through these student organizations, where really any student on campus who has an idea gets some friends together to do good, to make a difference, can put together one of these student organizations, and we've seen some tremendous impact. Some of these organizations are about their organizing principles around identity, so they're a really good place to find people from similar backgrounds. If you want to find networks and groups that can really be helpful as you're navigating through the 4 years of college.
I love.
Yeah, go
Sorry,
for it.
Via. What I love about these is that they really are run by students, and they are so in tune with this idea of I wish this would have existed when I needed it. And then moving that forward, right? Or somebody did this for me when I was a student, and like now I'm going to pay it forward to another student. And I love that really community feeling instead of this competitiveness. It's not that at all. It's very much a community. And I just really appreciate that from the students.
Absolutely. Um, there's a question in the chat about some of the things that computing students do after college. And it's perfect timing, I think, for us to go to the next slide, because we have some examples of avenues to pursue that we're really excited about in terms of what our students have done with their college experience. One thing that really sets UCSD apart is our research focus. So we are an R1 research intensive university with just an amazing array of projects that are happening here on campus. And this is really an opportunity for undergraduate students to go beyond what the experience of being in a lecture hall or in a classroom could be, to step outside of those traditional classroom roles and go into supporting cutting edge research that's discovering things that have never been discovered, building things that have never been built. And in computing at UC San Diego, there's lots of opportunities to get involved in research. We have a couple of programs that are intended to help navigate the path to research. ERSP is the Early Research Scholars Program, and it is an opportunity for first year and second year students to get placed in a research team, really get mentored in what research even is, and how one might start contributing. And it's perfect for people who have very little experience going in and just want to test the waters, see what it's like. For folks who have maybe a few more quarters of classes under their belt, have more to contribute, there's the Research Experience and Applied Learning Portal, the REAL portal, that's available on campus, where various research labs and faculty will post opportunities. I'll say, hey, I'm looking for 2 people to work with me for 10 hours a week for 12 weeks in the summer. I've got this project. I need these things built. Here are the skill sets that I'm looking for people to come to the project with. And so it's basically a job board for research. And I've found some fantastic students to work with through that. We also have Engineers for Explorations, which is an amazing project on campus that has multiple projects that undergraduate students can work on that really involve deploying research to make a very specific impact on the world. Some sample projects that they work on include putting little sensor devices on animals and then tracking migration and family patterns in the wild, or taking drones inside ancient ruins and mapping the caves, mapping the architectural ruins of Maya temples, looking at surfboards as ways to measure ocean temperatures and climate change by putting sensors on surfboards and taking out and surfing in the ocean, because we're right here on the beach. There's amazing stuff that happens with Engineers for Exploration, and they do big intakes every year for students. There's also opportunities to get connected with individual faculty research teams, especially once you've taken a few classes, gotten to know the faculty members, gotten to know the teaching assistants, who are often graduate students involved in research, and start asking questions, being curious about what goes on and how you might get involved. I just want to mention some of the highlights that we put on the slide here. There's really cutting edge research and data science going on in Ilke Altintas's group. They host Wi-Fi, which is aggregating all of the information from the entire state about wildfires, trying to project the spread and also mitigation efforts to help with the impacts of wildfires. And I know that she has recruited lots of students from CSE 15L, a lower division programming course, to intern with her in the Supercomputer Center, and have had folks who work with her on the Wi-Fi project as well. Another project I wanted to highlight is the image you see with the green rectangles. This is a health healthcare robotics project that's happening on campus, where Laurel Rick and her students have been thinking about how robots can be deployed in healthcare settings to work alongside humans. And there's a lot that goes into computer vision, autonomous systems, mathematical modeling and control, to make sure that these robots are safe and that they're helpful. And so these opportunities are, they're at your reach and they're super exciting here at UC San Diego.
Mia, one of the questions is, do you have to be a top student to go into research?
Oh, that's a good question. It really helps if you stand out in some way. It helps if you demonstrate your interest and curiosity, and if you have something to contribute. I've worked with plenty of students who aren't 4.0 GPAs, but they came to office hours and they showed initiative and they showed that they cared about the project that I care about, and that they want to help solve a problem with me, and that they have they have the skills or are willing to learn the skills that are needed to be successful. And that is awesome, even if maybe they had a spotted record like along the way. They had some bumps in the road. That doesn't prevent people from doing fantastic research.
And one question that kind of goes back to our previous slide is, are the upper division classes conducted by professors or TAs? I heard TAs conduct most of the classes. I think there's a discrepancy between discussions and lectures, and maybe that would be.
It's a good point, and we can clarify that. So often our classes will have multiple components. So there will be the lecture, and then there might be discussion sections. A standard load class is considered 4 units, and so that often is somewhere around 4 contact hours. We'll typically have 3 hours with the instructor of record, the faculty, the professor, and then maybe an hour with the discussion with the teaching assistant. We have just about all of our classes have TA or tutor support, but it is really in support of the faculty or the instructor of record who is leading the class. Thank you for asking. All right, so research is one awesome opportunity to explore as you're thinking about your path in computing. But a lot of folks are thinking about industry as well. And our students definitely think about how to get hands-on experience while they're in college, both so that they're in a really good position when they're applying for full-time positions, but also so that they know if that's something they're interested in as they're deciding between industry jobs and which kinds of industry jobs, as well as graduate school. So internships are a really good idea to really get a taste of different aspects of this career. And we have students who take multiple internships while they're in college. They'll sometimes bounce from one company to another, from one summer to another. Sometimes trying a startup, sometimes trying a really big company. Sometimes they're moving across different groups within a company. It's a really amazing opportunity to see the industry from the inside out. And we've had really great success with our students finding awesome positions for these internships. All of the logos here are related to actual internships by actual students in the last few years. And we have opportunities for our students to get together and talk about their experiences. We have a big summer internship symposium that we have every fall where the students compare notes on how things went, and we get to celebrate the amazing work that they did, and just talk about how the internships inform their studies and vice versa. So the next slide is about that, but Veronica, did you have something to add?
Yeah, somebody specifically is asking about the E&J Gallo Winery. If you know, how were the students involved in helping them?
Yeah, well, so I do. This was very recent. And the person who was at that internship was saying how they're really happy that they were persistent in looking for the internships, because this position didn't necessarily come to mind when they first thought about all the companies that they should apply for, but they had a great time. When you think about what you do day to day, even when you're doing something that isn't strictly speaking computing, like you may not be programming, you may not be building a drone or something, but if you're interacting with just about any part of commerce, we do so much of our life right now, especially when we're doing things remotely, we do things mediated by technology. And so businesses all have to have an e-commerce piece. They've got websites, they've got apps, they've got payroll, they've got inventory, and all of that has to be designed, has to be maintained, it has to be secure. And so that internship was around the website development for the winery. Yeah, so I wanted to share some of our students' words. I find that the students often say this so much better than I can in terms of the value of some of these experiences. So this is, with permission, words of one of our students. They said, "For some reason, I always found it kind of hard to believe that I would know enough to adapt and fit in at a company right out of college. I knew that I was getting a good education, and I've really enjoyed my time at UCSD. But I think my feeling about the future stemmed from a lack of confidence. I now know," this was written at the end of the internship, "I now know that school is important, but it's not necessarily the lesson plans and projects that prepared me for the future. It was the habits I created and what I learned about myself while doing them. My internship shifted my attitude in a way I did not really expect. Going back to UCSD, I'm going to focus more on the big picture of a topic and fostering things like problem-solving skills, rather than just trying to complete an assignment or get the right answer. One of my biggest takeaways was how much you can learn from and with others." And the student put it so beautifully. This is one of my big takeaways as well. And one of my lessons for you, messages for you, is that as you think about your college journey and your computing journey, think about the technical lessons you'll learn in class, and think about all of the lessons, both technical and non-technical, you'll learn out of class as well. When you're choosing a major, when you're choosing a college, think about that whole experience, what you want that to look like, and what the right fit will be for you. So now we're going to get to when you apply. In that spirit, when you're thinking about putting together your application, and specifically here for UC San Diego, I really encourage you to consider all the majors you might be interested in. And specifically for UC San Diego, if you're thinking about computing, I really encourage you to check out computingpaths.ucsd.edu and that list of majors that we mentioned a while back, that is all of the computing related majors that we offer on campus. Learn about what's involved in each of those majors, what are the courses that are required, what are the other components that are available, and then learn also about what it takes to switch into that major or apply into that major. There are a lot of questions in the chat here about what it means to switch between majors or to take classes in one department if you're in another. And those are really good questions to think about. We'll answer as many as we can today, but keep asking those questions. Make sure you're informed. And what I want to tell you, coming from CSE today, if you're interested in a CSE major, so that means a major in computer science and engineering, please, please, please include that major in your preference list when you're applying to UC San Diego. And here's why. So we have 3 majors. Computer science, that's our flagship major. Most of our students are in computer science. That's a major that's really balanced between software theory applications, has lots of room for breadth and depth to specialize while you're still learning that full breadth of computer science. And we also have 2 other fantastic majors, the computer engineering major, which is really about that software hardware interface, and also a CS bioinformatics major that's about using computing to understand living systems. And for all three of those CSE majors, we do want to make sure that folks are aware of the admissions policy that we have starting in fall 2022. So that's on the next slide. Thank you. Starting in fall of 2022, our incoming CSE class will be growing. So we are going to ask admissions to admit to us, please, into our majors, a larger class than we've had in previous years. And what we want to do is really serve those students who are coming into our majors as best we can. What this will mean is that it will be hard, if not impossible, to switch into a CSE major for those who aren't admitted directly upon matriculation to UC San Diego. So if you are interested in one of those three CSE majors that we just mentioned on the previous slide, please do the research like you're doing right now, thinking about these questions. And when you putting together your application to UC San Diego, please list one of those CSE majors on that preference list if you're interested, because once folks are coming to campus, there won't be flexibility for really for switching into those CSE majors. But major doesn't mean the end of the story, because we have so many majors on campus here. We do have this amazing computing community that's much broader than any one major. And so we really do look forward to welcoming and meeting and working with all of the folks on campus who are interested in computing, regardless of their majors.
Before I move on to the next slide, I want to kind of ask some of the questions in the chat or the Q&A. So what's the difference between data science and computer science in terms of coursework and schedules?
Ooh, good question. Thank you. There are many differences. So the programs are quite different in terms of the specific courses that students take in data science and computer science and engineering. And so that's why it's really important to look through the program's websites and understand what the 4-year plans would look like for the courses. There's of course some shared skill sets across these different majors and the preparation. And there are opportunities to take electives in the other department of the one that you're in. But they really do have very different flavors, those two programs. So you just want to make sure to look at the websites, see some example projects that the people have done in those two majors that you can see on computingpaths.ucsd.edu, and try to make as informed a decision as you can.
And there's also questions about how difficult is it for non-CSE majors to take CSE classes. So I'll give a little bit, and then I don't know if you'll want to add some. But again, for lower division, it's pretty open. For some of the introductory upper division, like 100, 101, 105, they do tend to offer a lot of seats every quarter. And that's because every single CSE major has to take the class along with the math CS majors and the minors and all of that. So they do tend to offer a lot of seats there. But some of the classes that are really popular, but they just cannot offer enough seats, are like security, cryptography, some of those smaller classes that don't scale well. So those are going to be really difficult to get into if CSE majors are getting priority because they have to graduate on time. So it can be sometimes frustrating for majors in other departments who may want the courses and can't get in the quarter that they want. Is it impossible? Usually no. It's just about being flexible about when you're going to take it and which instructor you're going to take it with, and being flexible with different courses as well. So being open to taking another class. So there's a lot of like artificial intelligence courses, machine learning. So maybe you don't get into 150A, but you get into 150B. You don't get into 151A, but you get into 152B, something along those lines. So just being flexible is going to be one of the big key things for taking upper divisional CSE classes as a non-CSE major. And I'm not sure the question is, what is the GPA range for CSE majors? And I'm not sure if that means before they matriculate or after, because after it's 0 to 4. So it really just depends on the student. But before, I'm assuming admissions that, it's pretty high because it's a competitive major to get into. But I will refer that over to our admissions team. And then can you double major in computer science and something else? Yes, absolutely. We have a few different double majors. And it just depends on how many classes a student can take. UCSD does have a policy now that incoming transfers have to graduate within 6 quarters and freshmen have to graduate within 12 quarters. So it's whether or not you can take the requirements for both within that allotted time. So some students, can take 5 or 6 classes and it's fine. Other students can really only manage 3 to 4 classes. So it really depends on each student, what they're available to do, how prepared they are for the classes before getting here. And, thinking about what are the outside obligations outside of class. So are they working 20 hours a week? Do they have, family situations that they have to take care of? Are they having to do volunteer work in the community? All of that takes away time from being able to take classes. So it really depends on each individual student, but once you arrive here, we're happy to kind of work with you, especially at the college level, to see, okay, what are the different options and how do we put these two together? If it's not a double major, maybe it's a major and a minor. So we can look at those, but it really depends on each student.
I noticed you mentioned preparation, and there was a question here. Would a person with little to no computer science background learn all of the fundamentals they would need in the lower division classes? Absolutely. We've designed a curriculum that is very responsive to different levels of preparation in computer science. And in particular for our introductory sequence to computer science and to programming, we have different tracks that folks can self-select into based on the amount of preparation that they have. That will bring people to the exact same courses after they've done the intro sequence. And we just want to make sure people have the time they need to get prepared at the same level so that they can take follow-on courses with confidence and succeed. So there's lots of opportunities to start from scratch if you haven't taken computer science before. And I'll just share that I never took any programming class. I never programmed a single thing until my second year of college when I was an undergrad. And it's definitely possible to succeed without having that prior preparation.
Another question is, does data science come under math, statistics, or computer science departments? Neither. So data science is actually its own program under the HDSI, right?
Yeah. It's the Halegiolu Data Science Institute.
There you go.
Dr. Taner Halegiolu, who is a UC San Diego alumnus, who is really well connected to our campus and actually also teaches a class. He teaches a really cool seminar class about what it takes to run the back end of a big company, drawing on his experience in industry in companies like Facebook and Blizzard. So he's definitely given back a lot to the campus and to the department.
Yeah. Another question was, when you mentioned CSE growing, does that mean you will be admitting more students?
Yes.
In one way, right? So like we admit more students, but
right.
Then we are almost eliminating the transfer option, like the cap major process. It's going to be there in case seats open up, but it's not likely.
So, right, our overall major size is roughly 2,000 students, and it's roughly at the limit of what we can support with the resources that we have. So at this point, with the level of class availability and staffing, that the standards that we want to maintain, we don't foresee being able to support more than 2,000 majors without additional resources. Now, the way that those 2,000 majors have come to CSE in the past has been a combination of folks who come in matriculating as CSE, and then some who switch into the major after having spent some time at UCSD. And that caused so much stress for students with uncertainty whether they would get in, how long it would take them to get in, what courses they would take. And it ended up being a process that we think didn't serve students as well as we would want. And so the transition right now is to try to admit as many students as we can from the get-go. So we're growing the number that come in as CSE majors from the beginning. But as Veronica points out, that does mean that there'll be little to no opportunities to switch into the major once folks are already here on campus.
Okay, another question, and this is a really good question, is if you are admitted as a CS major, will you be able to switch to a CS with specialization in bioinformatics? So yes, if you're admitted to any of the 3 computer science and engineering majors, you're allowed to switch freely within once you start taking classes at UCSD. But that's only within CSE. So like electrical and computer engineering also has a computer engineering major. Those majors would not be able to freely switch into a CS major. So it's really important to know which department you're in, because sometimes the names of the majors are a little bit misleading and confusing for students, not realizing that there's 2 computer engineering majors, one in electrical computer engineering and one in computer science and engineering. So they're not the same. They are, in content, but they're treated differently because they're in different departments. But yes, if you're admitted to one of the CSE majors, you're allowed to freely change within the department.
Yeah. I saw a question also about someone who's interested in music and computer science. And I want to point out one of our majors on campus here that I think is maybe not as well known, but I think is really special and a really cool opportunity. We have a major called Interdisciplinary Computing and the Arts and Media. And it's got 2 majors, one that's visual arts and one that's music. And it's a really cool opportunity if you're looking to pursue computing and also either visual arts or music. And more information about that major and all of these computing related majors is on computingpaths.ucsd.edu.
Another good question, is it possible for your major's course requirements to fulfill some of your college's GE? Yes. So say in Ravel, we have 3 math requirements plus 5 science requirements. And in computer science and engineering, or at least in the computer science majors, have to take, I think, 4 math classes. So 3 of those would already count towards your college GEs. And then the 2 general science courses that computer science majors have to take could also overlap with your Ravel college GEs. Each college is really different with their requirements. So I would recommend taking a look at those requirements before you choose one, because if you choose one and it's your number one, and then later on you're like, oh, I didn't realize that that's what it meant, it's not easy to switch. So really, really highly recommend you take a look at the requirements before you select your college as well.
I see a question about quantitative financial analysis. I think that's been in there for a while, so thank you for your patience. There isn't a major that I'm aware of that's explicitly econ or financial analysis and computing, but I do know that recently some of our social science departments have started computational programs that might be of interest. So I would recommend taking a look at some of our social science programs and see the new initiatives that they have there. Psychology has something, I believe economics does too.
And Mia, there's a request for you to go over the health aspects of computing, as well as provide links to organizations and research projects conducted by students at UCSD.
Sure, thank you. So I think you're asking about some of the research projects connecting healthcare and computing and robotics. There are lots of initiatives here on campus. We have a fantastic bio and biotech connection here on campus. And there are multiple joint appointments of folks in School of Medicine and folks in computer science engineering. So there's really a lot of cross-pollination that happens there. I'll just mention a couple of projects that I've heard about that I think are really cool. One project that's very recent was a collaboration to accelerate the sequencing of COVID strains that were coming up in testing, to map out mutation, to map out which variant is dominant in the community, and to take algorithms that had been known in the community but were very, very slow. And this is actually an undergraduate researcher who was lead on this, to re-implement them using some tools from algorithmic analysis and from just more modern programming languages that led to huge speed ups in the sequencing. And their results were used in citywide forecasting of understanding COVID trends, as well as the return to learn efforts on campus. So that's one example. Another one of the projects that I think is really cool is in the robotics lab here. They think about how to build and program robots that help with things like pill dispensing. When you think about supporting community members that are aging in place, so folks who are older, maybe less agile and not able to open pill bottles as easily, and maybe there's concerns around memory and keeping track of medications. How can robots be used to support that so that folks can be independent and healthy for longer? And so that's being developed here as well. And there's been a lot of work here on the microbiome, understanding the digestive tract. And there's a colleague here who recently had used his own body and offered up his own microbiome to be sequenced and to be studied, to get models of how we can predict and personalize medicine as well. So lots of really cool applications.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, since the amount of students going into CSC will increase, does that mean that it will be harder to be accepted into that major? We're actually hoping it's the opposite, right? Accepting more students at the front end at the time of admission, so that students know coming into the university whether or not they are able to major in computer science, specifically in the CSC department, because one big thing is we want students to make good choices. We want students to make informed choices. So one way to do that is to make sure that students know coming in what to expect. So if you're coming into UCSD and you have not been admitted to computer science, there's a ton of really great majors, which we kind of talked about in cognitive science, data science, ECE, biology. So all these other departments that offer these really great majors. But if you're coming in here saying, no, the only major I will be happy with is in the computer science and engineering department, then we want you to make a good choice and go to wherever it is that you can actually choose that major that you want to be in. But if you're coming here and you're saying, okay, you know, bioengineering, bioinformatics would be great, or cognitive science, I can do that and have CS as my backup, then that would be a great time to go ahead and still move in here, even if you were not admitted to computer science and engineering at the time of admission. But again, if you are expecting to be able to switch over, that's really not going to be likely. We're not going to say it's impossible, but we want students to really think about their choices and make informed decisions. And so the reason, that's one of the big reasons, is allowing for more students to be admitted at the time of admission, but also with the understanding that there's going to be less chances for switching over once you're already here.
There's a question about taking courses that are not CSE, in particular, say an econ course while being a CSE major. And yes, absolutely, there's opportunities for electives, though we recommend that our majors talk to their college advisors to make sure that their plan is on track for four-year graduation. I will say, and this is something I forgot to mention before, we also have entrepreneurship initiatives within within computing, within CSE majors. So if you're curious about that overlap between business and computing, there are incubators and startup labs, and we also have an entrepreneurship course in our department as well that might be of interest.
Perfect. And Mia, are you able to elaborate on the differences between the CSE majors and majors in cognitive science?
I think in the interest of time, I probably shouldn't go too deep into those differences, except to invite you to check out computingpaths.ucsd.edu, where there are more details. There's different emphases. So the majors really are different, which is why it's so great that you're doing your research right now. You're doing your homework and making sure that you're being informed when you do fill out that application to UC San Diego. Because you do want to understand the differences between these majors. There's some core pieces that overlap in terms of learning programming, learning computational thinking and digital literacy, and understanding how to navigate the digital world. That's going to be available no matter what your major is. But then beyond that, what your discipline, what the specialization within the discipline is, really will be quite different. So make sure to do your homework there.
Okay, and I'll answer one last question before we move on to our last slide, which is, by how much is the department increasing the number of direct admits to CSE? Basically, we're taking the number of students who would have been admitted through the CAP major process, which is 100, and moving those 100 students over to our admissions. Admissions does a really great job of looking through all of the applications and knowing who should be admitted. So we're just going to give that back to them, and we don't want to do their job for them. So it's back to admissions. They can have those extra 100 seats to admit as many students as we can at the start. So that way students also aren't worried their whole first year about whether or not they're going to be admitted to a major. They know right from the get-go who they need to go talk to, what courses they need to be taking, and it just relieves a lot of stress for everyone, and that's students, staff, faculty alike. Yeah. So moving on. Oh, do you want to say something?
Just one more thing. I just want to clarify that when we talk about direct admits and admitting to matriculation, we are including in that both folks coming direct from, say, high school and those who are transferring in. There are definitely seats in CSE for transfer students. We definitely want to work with you all. So we're expanding the number of both direct admits and transfer students who will be coming into the CSE major upon matriculation.
Yeah, when we say transfer, like there's no continuing student switching over. So when you're already here, but yes, incoming freshmen, incoming transfers, we definitely want all of them.
As many as we can really
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
If we could, we would take everyone who was interested, but we do have limited resources.
So just some last minute advice if you were to come to UCSD, and really it actually kind of applies to anywhere you go, to come to class 5 minutes early, say hi to the instructor, say hi to the person next to you. When we talked about, connecting to research opportunities earlier and how do you stand out, like that's one way, right? If our classes are 400 to 600 people in a classroom, how are you going to stand out? Well, it's like that person who takes the effort to come in, say hello, sit at the front of the class so the instructor recognizes you and you're able to ask those really intuitive questions that then make you stand out in their mind later on. Saying hi to the person next to you. You never know when you're going to need to borrow notes. So making those connections, being friendly is always super helpful. We have a saying on campus: start early, start often. And especially as it relates to programming assignments, not waiting to the day before when everyone else is in the lab trying to get their answers question, because all of a sudden nobody knows, how to answer that one question. So definitely start early. As soon as it's assigned, start your assignments so if you have to go get help before the rush. Find study friends and good team members. That was really my saving grace in college, was finding good study groups with people who understood what I was going through, especially when the midterms came and I had to stay up all night, and developing good study habits. That really took having a good group of friends who understood what I needed, and not, people who were going to encourage me to do things that I didn't need to be doing at that time. Get involved, but don't overcommit. Mia talked a lot about all the different opportunities, and all of them are really great to get involved with, but not all at once, right? So you want to spread it out through your time here at UCSD, but I definitely recommend engaging in all of those opportunities. That's really kind of where our students get the bang for the buck, is going through all of these different experiences. It's not just sitting in the classroom listening to lectures. Also, make sure you take care of yourself. Eat well, sleep well, exercise, connect with family or friends. We don't want you to get burned out by the end of, winter quarter. We want you to be able to kind of stay motivated and stay interested. And the only way to do that is to really stay in good health and taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally. And be creative, be bold, be kind. We want you to take care of yourself, but be courageous and just take chances to really step outside of your comfort zone. We hope you have enjoyed this presentation and you learned a lot and you found it helpful. I'm going to pass it off to Kristen.
Thank you both so much. I think I've told you this before, but every time you present to our team and I hear this presentation, I just learn so much more than I did before. So thank you. I'm sure the students we have in attendance here learned a lot, and I just want to thank you both for answering all of those great questions. And I loved seeing the animated graphics on each of the slides. I thought that was a really awesome touch to see that. So thank you both for your time, and thank you students for spending the evening with us. And like Mia mentioned multiple times, it's great that you're doing your homework early and learning about all of these options and asking your questions. So we appreciate your time here too.